Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I am Janet Gillow, Director of Professional Development for the Brown School, and welcome to Open Classroom. We are so delighted you're here today for our program, and if you are returning, welcome back. If this is your first time, welcome to the Brown School. While we cannot open our physical doors for events and community, we're hosting this platform for connection, learning, and we're so delighted to have you with us. I'm joined by my co-host, Cynthia Williams, who's our Assistant Dean for Community Partnerships, and she'll be leading off today's discussion. But before I hand the mic over to her, I want to let you know some of the things that we have coming up. Particularly in this lead up to the election, there is so much to say, and we're running really about 3 programs a week. So this is the last one for this week, but a triple header next week. On Monday in the morning at 9 o'clock, we have Javad Kazili, a distinguished graduate of Washington University School of Law, and he'll be speaking to the racism inherent in current immigration laws. That evening, we're partnering with other Washington University colleagues, the Gephardt Institute, Clark Fox Policy Institute, and also the new Center for Race, Ethnicity, and Equity, for the second in our series, 2 Pandemics, 1 Election. That's going to be a really interesting panel discussion regarding redefining equity with a particular focus on educational equity and healthcare equity. And then Tuesday of next week, 12:30, we have Nancy Morrill-Howe facilitating a conversation on COVID, healthcare, and older adults. So a range of really compelling programming. Register at the Open Classroom website. I will throw the link in the chat. We'd love to have you back. And now to talk about what we have going on today and introduce our speaker, Cynthia Williams.
Thank you, Janet, and welcome to our audience again this afternoon. So happy to have you here. And it is a pleasure to introduce my colleague, Dr. Gena McClendon. She is the Director of Voter Access and Engagement and the Financial Capability and Asset Building Initiatives at the Center for Social Development. Dr. McClendon's work, her program, Development and Policy Advocacy, focuses on issues related to voter suppression and civic participation of low and moderate income households and marginalized populations. It is a delight to have you here, Dr. McClendon, and I'm going to turn it over to you, so take it away.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for this invitation, Janet and Cynthia. I am going to share my screen with you, and we'll get started. So the first thing that I want you to recognize is that the name of this, I've named it What's at Stake, and I named that for a reason, and I'm going to show you why.
Yaritza Burgos, Christopher Carmichael, Tina Carmichael, Randy Burkhead, Christopher Carter, Edward Rachel.
I couldn't vote. I was purged off the rolls. I was highly upset about it. I want to vote.
I don't want everybody to vote. As a matter of fact, our leverage in the elections quite candidly goes up as the voting populace goes down.
Mom, I don't want to hear about Selma anymore. We can actually go and vote. So I thought.
Oh, there's a plan. Oh, there's definitely a plan. People will go to great lengths to keep people from being free.
Whoever this guy is has challenged my right to vote.
It's about time we turned the lights on in the kitchen and started cleaning the cockroaches out of here.
Sheriff wanted him at neighbor screens.
He pretty much knew that he wasn't supposed to vote. It was just catch me if you can, or ha ha ha.
He said I use somebody's identity for voting. I'm not guilty.
When we think something like voting rights is something everybody believes and that progress only goes in one direction, we've seen sudden reverses. We've seen that history can go in the wrong direction.
There is a temptation for the majority to restrict voting rights of the minority because it helps them stay in power.
Those of us who are the descendants of people who were lynched, when you come from that kind of lineage, you're not going to allow some loudmouth bigot to intimidate you.
You see what's happening? The process is rigged. This whole election is being rigged.
So just a little introduction, and just so you know, the one guy that was being arrested, what happened with him is that he has the same name as his grandfather. And so when he went to the poll place, they actually, I'm so sorry, they actually, when he went there to go vote, he asked, he said, "Can I vote?" He gave them his name, but they didn't notice the birth date. And the year said 1918 or something like that. And so they allowed him to vote. He didn't know. So, but anyway, it's those sorts of things that happen. But so now I want to give you the why and the what of VAE. And what I want to tell you is just kind of a little story about how I came to wanting to do this work. And so in 2008, I volunteered as a poll worker on election day and intentionally worked in a community with high concentration of Blacks. That day I witnessed many failures, shortage of paper ballots, broken and faulty equipment, and a lack of proper assistance for people with disabilities. Unfortunately, the list goes on and on. I thought that these were typical occurrences on election day, anywhere. I thought maybe it just happens everywhere, right? But it didn't. So I also saw the excitement in the eyes of hundreds of voters, first-time voters, who were eager to help make history by voting for a Black man for president of the United States. I was excited to see so many people, especially young people, and particularly young Black males. As I passed out water and chatted with voters in line, I thanked them for coming because people like to feel appreciated. I began to ask questions like, is this your first time voting? Most of them, especially the young people, said yes. My follow-up question was, who else are you going to vote for? And they all unanimously said, nobody. I'm just here to vote for the president. And it was at that moment that I realized that there just wasn't a culture of voting, that people vote based on something that is familiar to them, something that they can connect with, and that's not how our democracy should be. So as a result of that, some years later in 2017, I got an opportunity to ask my director at the center if we could do something on voter suppression. He immediately said yes, because democracy and voting is something that is part of social work. That's what it is, right? So there are four kind of buckets that that VAE tries to support, and one is research, and of course to influence practice and policy. The other is an intentional focus on race. The third is support advocacy and engagement efforts. And then the last is to engage and train a new generation of voter protectors. Because if you think about it, who is it that knows about voting? How do you learn about voting? How are you oriented into a culture of voting? And I think social workers have that ability to do that. So of course, whenever you're getting ready to launch something, especially at CSD, we have to do research. We have to figure out what questions we want to know and make sure that what we're thinking, we can validate it or not validate it. So we did a research study in the 2018 election. So it was a multi-method study. And we did it by getting studying or observing polling places in St. Louis City and St. Louis County, 10 each. We further decided to separate that out by high population Black, high population white, low income, high income. And then of course we used students to do that work for us. So the findings weren't anything that we were surprised about, because essentially what we wanted to know is, are all things equal when it comes to being able to cast a ballot, particularly in person? And so what we found is that voting machine malfunctions and confusion had a tendency to happen more predominantly at Black polling sites. There were higher percentages of Black residents in communities of color who had fewer election judges and more interference with free passage of voters. So for example, some of the poll places, when you go in, the hallways are crowded. There's a lot of electioneering that goes on. Long lines and lack of seats for voters were more common in predominantly poll places. I mean, people were literally completing their ballots on the wall if they chose to use paper ballots or on the floor. There was higher police presence at these poll places, and the higher poverty polling places were more likely to have conditions that prevented people from casting a ballot. So again, like the conditions of seating and privacy and that kind of thing. So as a result of all of that, that is how we started to do the rest of our work. So the research was first, it informed what we wanted to do, and we knew more than ever that we really wanted to focus on voting as democracy. So this statement here by Thomas Paine, voting is the right upon which all other rights depend. And I just recently found this and actually heard someone say it, and I looked it up. And what I got from this, and this is just my interpretation, but voting is connected to every other single right that we have. So the right to have health care, the right to, to get married, if you're, whether you're heterosexual or other. All of those things depend on democracy. And of course, democracy cannot thrive if it's practiced, when it's practiced and not prevented. It only thrives then, excuse me. So now, I'd like to start this out by helping people to connect the Constitution with everything that happens in this country. So when we talk about voting matters, when we think about voter suppression, it goes all the way back to the Constitution. So when the Constitution was ratified in 1789, only white men, property owners, were allowed to vote. At first it was just white men, eventually became property owners. African Americans were considered 3/5 of a person, so that completely knocked them out, or us, being able to vote. And then that is when they first started the qualifications to vote for US representatives, which essentially is sort of akin to, or is part of what we know as the census. And that's how we do we're represented by the number of representatives is based on census. Then go down to 1865, the Civil War ends, creating the 13th Amendment. So you think, well, okay, slavery's over, there's no more, or everybody should be able to vote. Of course, and let me not forget women. Women could not vote at all either. And so it wasn't until, the 14th Amendment came around. So basically what happened here is that people were wanting to get rights for African Americans, but in order to be able to vote, you had to be considered a citizen. So think about this. First, we had slavery. We had to have an amendment to end slavery. Well, we had slavery in the first place. Then we had to have an amendment to end it. Then we had to have another amendment to say that African Americans were citizens. And then the 15th Amendment gives Black men the right to vote. Women still aren't included. So I'm gonna move on. These are some of the other things that if we have more time, I'd talk more about. So in 1920s, when we got the 19th Amendment, women gained the right to vote, but not all women were able to vote. It wasn't until 1965 when the Voting Rights Act came, is when everybody had more of an opportunity to vote, and most did. But later, one of the things that that I'm wanting to point out here is that the Voting Rights Act had to be reauthorized. So it's like, this is some sort of experiment. Let's see if this works, if everybody can have an opportunity to vote. So in 1993, things get a little better. We get the National Voter Registration Act, which created voter registration renewal at your Department of Motor Vehicles. So by the way, when you go to the Department of Motor Vehicles in Missouri, they should be asking you, number one, if you are registered to vote and would you like to register? And if they're not doing that, then they're violating the law. Then in 2002 was Help America Vote, which was an upgrade to voting machines and things like that. But it was 2013 when the Supreme Court found, oh, let me go back, 2006, look at this, Voting Rights Act, now it's reauthorized for 25 years. Again, this reauthorization. In 2013, the Supreme Court they take out a key piece out of the Voting Rights Act, which they deem unconstitutional. And so basically, the piece that I'm specifically talking about is the part that were protections in the Voting Rights Act that protected people in the South because of all the intimidation, the remnants or the things that continued on with Jim Crow and all that kind of stuff that happened. The federal government had the right to come in and deem whether or not if you wanted to change anything, a polling location, anything to your state laws, then you had to, which by the way, I think I failed to mention this. The federal government does not control anything when it comes to how people vote in states. The states make all of that decision, and that was by design as well. So in 2013, when this court ruling came, now all of a sudden there is no one watching. There's no one paying attention. There's no one there to help people try to vote. And so almost instantly, we started seeing all of these voter suppression things like voter ID laws, closing DMV offices. And the basis for this ruling was basically, in essence, things are okay. We have a Black president. We've had a Black president. We have one now. So we don't need these sort of protections anymore. So when I think about all of those different things that have happened, I have to think about why it is so important for BAE's work as well as any other organization that is working toward this end. It's also important because people, social work professionals, everybody needs to understand that this country is supposed to be about democracy, where all things are fair. They may not be equal, and we're still fighting for that, but we should have a right to vote on everything. Just like Thomas Paine said, the right to vote, depends on all the other rights. So this is a short clip about votes being
I think that
suppressed.
mail-in voting is a terrible thing.
If you ever agreed to it, you'd never have a Republican elected in this country again.
We are witnessing a tidal wave of voter suppression around the country.
If you look at Alabama,
Arkansas, North Carolina, and Georgia, which is becoming ground zero.
Georgia's tight race for governor is getting national attention.
Brian Kemp is not only the Republican gubernatorial nominee, he's Georgia's Secretary of State.
Stacey Abrams looking to make history by becoming the nation's first female African-American governor.
The Democrats are working hard, registering all these minority voters.
Civil rights leaders say Kemp is illegally removing people from Georgia's voters list.
The purges, they've been going on for over a century in this state.
My girl wanted to vote, and they were trying to keep her from voting.
The lines was crazy everywhere.
I tried contacting the Georgia Elections Board. My vote will not be counted.
I'm 65, and for the first time, I did not get a chance to vote.
We are not going to let them take from us what our grandparents and parents fought to give us in the first place.
The coronavirus pandemic is creating concerns ahead of the 2020 election.
We are here to resist an ID law that is undemocratic.
On my mother's dying bed at 92 years old, former sharecropper, her last words were, "Do not let them take our votes away from us."
So you might wonder, why am I showing this? This was just recently. This wasn't years ago. That particular situation was going on in Georgia. And I'm sure many of you probably heard about it, where people were just taken off the voter rolls. more so in Black communities than anywhere else, and in Georgia. And let me tell you something else that's going on in Georgia right now, the conversations that they're having. They're talking about calibrating the voting machines. These are the conversations that they're having. Calibrating meaning that only so many ballots will be counted, up to a certain point, and then it will stop. I mean, just anything and everything. Felony disenfranchisement, that's a big issue. Fortunately, in Missouri, you can vote if you are an ex-felon. You have to make sure that you have completed all of your probation, parole, anything like that is connected to that. There isn't anything in the Constitution that talks about specific little fines or things like that, but you have to have met all of the requirements that the Department of that the DOJ or the Department of Prisons or whoever makes that decision, you have to have that done. Now, in other places, that's not the case. And in fact, let me go back. In fact, in Missouri, the only reason why you could lose your right to vote, or a felony the only felony that can make you lose your right to vote in Missouri is voter fraud. That's it. Anything else, you are able to vote. So in Florida, they didn't allow voting for ex-felons at all up until a couple of years ago. So the citizens overwhelmingly voted that they wanted ex-felons to be able to vote. Well, the legislature decided, we don't want that. So what we're going to do is we're going to institute a policy where you have to pay all of your restitution first, okay? Which means that if you've been in prison for 10 years and there was a restitution of $10,000, but you've been in prison, how are you going to pay that $10,000? So the good news is there are many groups and things like that that are working to help get those fines and fees paid. You may have read about Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York, putting in money. What I'm getting ready to show you now is the efforts of one man and some other people, Desmond Meade, who is an ex-felon. And this is just short. This is before the law actually got passed. Oh, nope, sorry, wrong thing.
You got to vote as if your life depend on it, because it do. For African Americans, it do. If we don't vote, then we end up having to live in a situation where there are policies that cause us to be gunned down in the street like animals.
That's the most offensive thing I've seen in the last 30 years.
What's up, buddy? All right, all right. Today is the last day of early voting, right? To where people can vote anywhere, right?
We want change and leadership for brown and black people in this community.
But according to this list, these people haven't voted yet. Your vote is our voice. Bam, let's rock it. That's how we do this thing. One vote at a time. We can't vote because we got a record. Just because we can't vote, that don't mean we got to be silenced, right?
That's right.
It is so easy to get a felony in Florida. They say you come to Florida on vacation, you leave on probation. My name is Desmond Meade. How you doing, brother? Your vote gonna count today, bro. Yeah. If I wasn't, my knees wasn't bad, I'd just carry on my back, you know? So what's up, Facebook family? He is a registered voter, and he's allowing us to take him to the polls to go and vote. We're on the trail, Papa. We're gonna make sure everybody who wanna vote get an opportunity to vote. We got an issue now. What's up? They turned him away. And the supervisor of elections erroneously turned him away. You know what it is, man? Driver with a suspended license. This was back in '93. And we think that once you do your time, you get the right to, you should have the right to vote.
A plea bargain is not justice, and that's what we want. That's what we're looking for.
You guys like my dad, man.
Don't
hell you gonna do a black man like that? How you gonna do a human being like that?
To break every chain, break every chain, break every chain. To break every chain.
That's a frustration, man. Everybody else get to vote. You can't vote.
So I mentioned earlier that one of the things that I recognized when I was doing that volunteer work in 2008 is that there isn't a culture of voting. And I couldn't wrap my head around why until one day I thought about what is it, how is it that I vote and other people don't seem to care about it one way or the other? Well, my indoctrination in terms of voting came from my family. So, I watched my grandparents vote. I watched my parents vote. They talked about those things. They had those conversations. Maybe it's because I grew up in the era where, following the 1965 Voting Rights Act. I'm not sure, or the Civil Rights Act. I'm not sure what it was, but I know that I knew that it was important in the value of voting. I may not have known all the pieces, but I understood that it was my right. And as long as it was my right, I knew that I needed to do that. So after talking to different people and asking them, how do they learn how to vote? It was the same thing, same conversation that I got. Then I ran across this video. It's a young guy named, rapper named Yellow Pain. And I would encourage you, to, if you can, to watch this again. But I want you to watch this because he explains it and breaks things down in a way to help you understand how people can easily be disconnected from voting.
Enough electoral votes, more than 270, more than enough to become the 44th President of the United States. He will be the first African-American President of the United States.
I've been broke all my life, but I kept hope all them nights. You see business in my city? Yeah, they closed all them twice. I was just riding down Salem, all them damn potholes I can't drive. I know y'all can fix it faster, but I know y'all won't try. Don't nobody care about us. Wrong vote. Voted for Obama back in 2012. I remember that's when I had hope. He was saying, yes, we can. And everybody got less food stamps. And when I turned 21, I was still broke. I'd never vote again. I don't think I ever had a president make my life better. Did it all on my own. Ain't no politician ever do a nice gesture. I don't even know the mayor's name. I ain't never seen her one time ever. Tell me how she gonna help the city. When I'm supposed to do write letters. When I'm supposed to do blame Trump. He ain't never really gave her. Ain't nobody raised minimum wage. None of these jobs pay enough. I think they just want to keep us broke, cause they ain't putting none in place for us. This how all my people feel, but we gotta learn. We complained enough, let me change it up. Everything I just said, everybody I know think the same way. See, they don't want to see us vote, and we never do, so we see the same thing. But all our votes really do count, and they'll never really let it show. So now I'm finna break it down, cause if I don't, you would probably never know. First thing first, you know back in middle school when they taught us, it was 3 branches of the government. We forgot it when we got older. It's the judicial, the legislative, and executive. But all we know is the executive. That's the mayor or the governor and the president. Now none of them 3 people make no laws, they just be checking them. The laws come to their desk and all they do is say no or yes to it. So when the news station tried to tell us that Barack Obama couldn't put us on, we was all salty at Obama when it was the Congress members all along. We gotta focus on the legislative branch, yeah, they the ones that make the laws. Yeah, they the ones write how much food stamp money you get on the card. But when people that wanted to help us wanted the job, I know they probably lost. Cause we ain't even know their name, we ain't know their face, we ain't know it all. So the Congress or the State House, that's legislative, they make laws. So what we want from the president is what they do, okay y'all? See, they election every 2 years, but we don't ever even go to those. The Congress, they can raise minimum wage, but we ain't even really know it though. So you know how back in 08, when we all voted for Obama, we was all supposed to go back in 2010 and vote for the Congress. Cause they the ones make child support laws, they the ones choose if your kids at school get to eat steak or corn dogs. The State House make the court costs. So if the country failed, then you can't say it's them, it's your fault. Cause y'all ain't know to vote for Congress members that was for y'all. And they don't gotta leave after 4 years, and we just let them sit it. See, they don't want to tell you this. They want you to focus on the president. Now, the third branch is the judicial, that's judges. They the reason why John Crawford and Trayvon ain't had justice. So when Meek Mill got locked up just for popping willies, we blame the judge and not the city when they let her get voted in, because they ain't know who to vote against. Imagine life on the other side. Roads better, schools better, everybody get their license back. Grocery store food better, custody of your kids back. Homeless people get new shelters. If we gon' fix the U.S., we gotta start with them 2 letters, me and you. Somebody told us that the government wanna keep us broke, but the only reason why those people in the government is cause we ain't vote. And I ain't talking about the president, I'm talking about the ones we ain't know. See, they was gonna try to keep it low, but it's gonna hurt them when they see the polls.
Every time you stay home, someone is making a decision about you, making decisions about the air you breathe, the water you drink, the food your kids eat, and how much money you bring home every 2 weeks. So every time you sit out an election, every time you don't show up because you think it doesn't matter, someone else is happy that you didn't show up, so they can make that decision for you. Vote.
Okay, so I saw a couple of the comments and I hope you enjoyed it. One of the things that I've learned doing this work is that it's so important to get different types of ways to express and help people understand the importance of voting. I can, you know, with my age group, I can say, oh, John Lewis and all these other people, but younger people don't, they can't connect to that. You know, it's like the debate that happened the other day. Yeah, I'm gonna go there for a second. It was something that many of us have never seen before. But what was pointed out to me in a meeting the other day, the Brown School, well, it wasn't the Brown School, I'm sorry, another group. What they pointed out to me is that that was the first presidential election debate that many people saw. You know, our young people, our 25-year-olds are, you know, I mean, so now I'm thinking, what more? What other work do we need to do on top of that? But everything matters. But anyway, so let me get to what you can do to fight. So vote, do voter registration. There was an opportunity that we sent out to people to sign up to be a poll worker. Lisa Johnson put in the chat that she is going to be an election judge. There are a couple of opportunities there. So these are, you're actually touching people, you know, you're in contact with people. The next set is the election protection. You can do field support. Field support is just being able to ride around in your car, checking poll places, making sure that people have, that they're able to vote. There's an 800 number that people call. They call it into lawyers and law students so that they can get assistance. And then there's another piece that we're doing with election protection, and that's the social media disinformation piece. So if you're interested in any of that, we're doing 2 trainings on October the 19th and again the following Saturday. Let's see, so this is something that we did to get the interest of people to vote. And so it was on September the 22nd. I wanted to leave that in, but we did it in honor of John Lewis. And I think I only have a few minutes left. Okay, so getting to the voting stuff. So in-person absentee vote, it started on September the 22nd. If you submitted your application for absentee or mail-in, you should have it by now. If you don't, you may want to call and check. October 31st, I have the wrong thing here. October 7th, today is the last day to register to vote. Today, you need to check your registration. Whether you voted in August or voted in March, check your registration. Things happen, okay? Make sure you check your family members, just make sure that it's there. Make sure that you are at the right address. And I think I've got a slide to cover that a little bit more. But anyway, October 31st, what I wanted to say is that this is the last day for the census. I got to throw in a plug for that. Get counted, it matters. October 21st is the last day to request an absentee and mail-in ballot. If you're waiting until the 21st, you're probably waiting too long. And then, of course, November 3rd is Election Day. And And so what I would say is just make sure you have a plan. Make sure you're registered at your address. Make sure that you have a plan on how you're going to vote. Is it you're going to do it in person? You're going to do in-person absentee? What is it that you're going to do? These are the different ways that you can vote. And if you haven't, you can download an absentee ballot from the St. Louis City's website or St. Louis County. St. Louis County, their application shows both absentee and mail-in. St. Louis City has two different ones, one for absentee, one for mail-in, but the information is the same. I would highly, highly suggest that you do absentee by mail. If you can, I would do in-person absentee. And the reason why I'm not a champion of mail-in is because you have to mail in the application and you have to mail in your ballot. And so there's more chance of error or something happening with the mail. But with absentee, you can drop it off. If you're doing absentee, this is what the city's thing looks like, the return envelope. I'm pointing this out because 40, let me see, I'm getting my numbers, but we did sunshine requests and got all this data. But there were quite a few people in St. Louis County, roughly about 4,500 ballots were rejected because people didn't sign their name or they didn't get their ballot notarized, which there are two reasons why you don't need your ballot notarized. And that is if you are, there's a new excuse, an additional excuse to vote absentee. And that is if you've had COVID or you're at risk for COVID, you don't need a notary. And then you don't need a notary if you are incapacitated or confined to illness. So just make sure you complete these pieces. The biggest reason why their ballots were rejected last time is because they didn't check this little box. Seriously, their ballot. And so we worked with one of our partners, and the St. Louis County allowed us to go in and call people to tell them that their ballots were rejected. And guess what? And one day I was there, 2 people were called and the person had died. So, I mean, and so just imagine you're on the phone, you're calling, trying to help make sure the person gets to vote, and then you're told that they passed away. These are the satellite sites. The ones in the city don't open until October the 12th. These are the hours. And so these are all libraries, and they're central, located, south side, north, midtown, and then of course the Central Library downtown. And of course you can still go to the Board of Elections office on Tucker. This is the county, the Board of Elections office here. So there's one at West County Government Center in Chesterfield, North County. And those are already open. The hours are here. If you maybe, I don't know if you can take a picture of it or something while I have it up. So one other thing I wanted to talk about, and I didn't put a slide in, is about making sure you know who's on the ballot. And this next part is what some of the things that are on the ballot this time. There are 2 state amendments, Amendment 1 and Amendment 3. This particular one is speaking to whether to extend the term restrictions for the governor, treasurer, lieutenant governor, secretary of state. You may be asking, what's the deal? Here's a little summary of it. Supporters of this bill say the term limits will keep elected officials from becoming career politicians, whereas opponents feel like, as a voter, they should vote people out and not something that's guided by the Constitution. And then, of course, you have to really not watch television or listen to the news, but I know you've heard a lot about Amendment 3. Amendment 3 essentially would reverse plus more of Clean Missouri. So if you remember in 2018, Clean Missouri was overwhelmingly passed by the people. And so the legislators had created an initiative to reverse that. In addition to reversing some of those things, the biggest piece that gives me pause is that if this passes, when we draw our state congressional districts based on population, this says that we can't count, we can only use voters in that count. So I'm gonna stop there with that, but you can look it up. There's Proposition D. I don't have time to go into that. I do want to just tell you quickly about the judicial retention. You know, every time there's this whole list of judges that we have to vote on. It's two types of judges in Missouri. So we have our partisan elected judges that run under a party label, like for example, Kim Gardner and Wesley Bell. So they have to go through this whole re-election process and all that kind of stuff. Nonpartisan judges are elected and they don't have challenges, and they're appointed. But what happens is that we have to do something called a judicial retention. Now you might say, well, you know, you get all these people, how do you find out? Where are they? What's the deal on them? Well, because they don't campaign, it's kind of hard to know what to do. However, Missouri is very fortunate in that we do have something called the Missouri Plan. But anyway, go to your MissouriJudges.org website. And when you go there, you click on judges, and then you go to your particular circuit court. So if you are in St. Louis County, it'd be the 21st or the 22nd in the city. There you'll see pictures of the people, their position. There's a little bio background about them. They are evaluated by their peers, and you can see the ratings there. And some of them have evaluations listed when they were evaluated by jurors. And this year, they actually have written opinions. So if you understand legalese, you can see their opinions and kind of base your opinion about that person. Don't get into, well, I shouldn't tell you what to do, but I wouldn't base my decision on whether or not that person was appointed by a Republican or a Democrat. That's not the best way to make that decision, in my opinion. And then finally, here are some resources. Let's see, I think that's it. That's all I have for that. I'll stop, and I'm sorry if I ran over time.
You didn't, Gena. You did a great job. And I agree with our audience that your use of media was very impactful. And thank you for the work that you put into this presentation. I would like to ask you, there's two things. If you get an opportunity, one of our participants asked, what was the name of the very first video that you showed? So if you could put that in the chat, or also we can find a way to get that to the audience. Mm-hmm. But as importantly, I'd like for you to talk a little bit more about the culture of voting so that our audience will walk away with a very clear understanding of what you were focusing on about the culture of voting and how it is emphasized by family, faith-based organizations, etc.
Well, when I showed the video of Yellow Pain, what struck me the most is how we get and receive information. So when the first thing I thought about was the only time I really learned anything about the three branches of government was in junior high, maybe a little bit in my junior year. And I grew up in Chicago area. So I think in our junior year, we had to take some kind of test about the Constitution, or we had to, learn the preamble, or, do something like that. But outside of that, I never heard anything about it. So that's one piece, is understanding that we get very little. The second thing is how people interpret voting and how it connects to day-to-day life. So just as was expressed in that video, the president can do some things, can do executive orders and things like that, but those aren't laws. They're not laws that are created by the Senate and the Congress. And so there's a difference. Just like he said so simply, if they could raise minimum wage, just like that. And it's, so there are different things. So when you connect it to day-to-day life kinds of things, that's what I mean by a way of creating a culture of voting. Now, I think a culture of voting is also being created, kind of based on how things are in this country right now with the current administration and other people, and planting doubt in folks' minds that that their vote won't count. And the third thing is that voting gives you a sense of, if you understand it, it gives you a sense of that it's important, that you matter. What you have to say and what you value matters. It doesn't matter who you vote for. It's the idea that this is a democracy and that you get to participate in it when you turn 18. And you can participate in all kinds of ways. It's not just voting. It's not just voting for the president. It's down ballot things, issues and ballot initiatives and things like that. It is running for office. We can do that. There are at least 6 social workers who are in office. So I don't know about you, but I think I call myself an honorary social worker. I'm not technically a social worker, but I think that's amazing. Who better could be, in government, because you understand the people, you understand their needs, right? The other thing is that while policy works, it doesn't work for everybody. So sometimes voting can do things that a policy can't do. So for example, I live in the city, I live in the 18th Ward. I can go to my alderman, call him up on the phone and say, hey, Alderman Todd, I need you to do this, and this. And if he doesn't do it, I can keep saying it. And if he doesn't do it, then I can let him know he doesn't have my support anymore. You'd be surprised how that works. Voting also is connected to your community, to resources, to, who's on your school board. These are the people that make a decision on what kind of, if there are enough educational equipment in your schools, the same way that the census does. You have to remember with the census, it's every 10 years and it's connected to mapping. So if you've got a 5-year-old, that kid's gonna be 15. So you kind of wanna make sure that you're counted so that you don't have to wonder what if your kid's gonna have books in school. So, but anyway, I'll stop there.
All really good thoughts. I want to echo the compliment that so many people have given, just the beautiful way you brought so many voices into the room, the way you structured your presentation. That was really compelling. But hit you with a quick housekeeping question and then something substantive from the audience. There is a request. Are your slides something that you're willing to share? Rich with resources and information. Would you be okay with us grabbing them and publishing a PDF version to the webpage for a bit?
Absolutely, as long as you don't do my notes.
Okay, I will not do your notes. Send me your presentation. We will publish it to the Open Classroom free resources. I'm going to share before we go a link with the audience where you'll be able to find us. Give us a couple hours or a day. And then I wanted to pass along a question from Kathy. She was raising that there is a difference between somebody being in jail versus prison for voting rights. And she's wondering if you are aware of any local initiatives people could tap into related to getting people that are jailed their access to the franchise.
Oh, that's a tough question. So what Kathy is asking is, if you're in jail and you haven't been adjudicated, you don't have a felony, you're just sitting in jail, you still have the right to vote. That's what she's asking for clarification about, and that is very true. Resources on who's working on that, Kathy, off the top of my head, I can't think of who might be doing that. But I'll see if I can. I know somebody. I don't think that there's one particular group that is just that's what they do. It may be part of a larger body of work that they do. But I have to think about that, and I'll let Janet know. We can post it if I can find it. I'm sure there's somebody. I'm just not sure who. Thank you for that question. That was great.
It's a great question. Something that you mentioned that I would love to understand better, because you about made my eyes pop out of my head, was the latest voter suppression effort in Georgia. regarding calibrating voting machines. Can you explain? I had not heard that. Totally horrifying. What's going on there?
Well, I mean, in 2 words, voter suppression. People are registering to vote in record numbers. And so anything that can be done to stop the vote is happening, and that's someone's bright idea. And so what I mentioned is not something that you may necessarily have read about, because I'm often in sort of higher level meetings with people who are doing things on disinformation and things like what I just described. Yeah, so these are conversations that are being had that I happen to have. I'm privy to them because of some of the things that I do. But, what I would say, don't underestimate anything. You will, so I don't know so much about Missouri. We're subject to see a lot of things here. I don't know, but if you see things on social media and they aren't true, you can report that to the election integrity group. And if you're not sure what to do, send it to me. But whatever you do, don't post it and say, oh, this is wrong, because you're just passing on that information again. There are things like people will say that Black people vote on November the 4th and white people vote on November the 3rd. If you don't know any better, that stuff happens. And these are things that are happening in Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, this was on the news, where there were 2 guys who got somebody to do a public service announcement kind of thing. It was on the radio. That basically said, if you vote, you could be arrested when you get there, because they're going to run your plates, right? So if you've got a warrant, you may get arrested. Then if you vote, your information is going to be given to the credit bureau, so they'll know where you are. This was like a week ago, and they were arrested. This was in, not Wisconsin, I'm sorry, Michigan. You can look that up. There's another piece that I'll add to this too, where in Britain, there was News 4. I'll find the link and send it to you. But it talks about the millions and millions of dollars that were spent on disinformation to try to get Black people not to vote. We are the single group that is always targeted. And the situation was so crazy that in this information, Black people, that they termed it deterrence. We were deterrents. So they were trying to deter us from being able to vote. And those kinds of things work. Sometimes they do work. And it doesn't take much to get somebody to not vote if they don't understand it and believe it in the system in the first place. And if you've been that group who has always been down, beat upon, whatever it might be, but so those kinds of things are happening.
Gene, I'd like to ask you, I know that this is a big stretch, it's a big question, but how do you think the outcome of the presidential election will impact voters, especially first-time voters?
Well, that is a big question, and I've been giving a lot of thought to and thinking about where BAU's work is going to go post-election, but I don't know. I mean, I want it to be hopeful. If the election is fair and square, I hope that it will bring a sense of, okay, I did my best. My side may not have won, but there wasn't any cheating that went on. So, I'm hopeful in that respect. I'm hopeful too in that so many people are connected and want to vote. If you just watch all the TV ads and different people talking about voting, this is unprecedented. We've never had networks with this whole strategy. One of those networks talks about plan your vote. Then you have other people that are constantly talking about voting. It's everywhere. And so from that perspective, I'm like, wow. So it gives me some hope, because if people vote this time, then it's creating that culture of voting, because we do have another election coming in 2022, whether we like it or not, it's coming, and people are planning now for the 2022 election. So yeah, so I hope I gave you a little bit, but I think too, what I worry about are our students and younger people. You know, like I mentioned that debate that, I don't know if we can even call it a debate, but how disillusioning it could be. But what I'm hoping is that it will give people some power and say, hey, this is too much. I am going to do something. So I want to be, I'm an eternal optimist. And so I'm just going to pray that all of this is going to work. And, you know, you have to ask yourself, why is all of this happening? We've got climate change, we've got COVID, we've got what's happening in our current administration. There's a reason for this. And so I have to, you know, keep thinking that something positive, you know, will help us to be more thoughtful about what we do, who we are as a country, about our democracy. So anyway.
Just one more comment, Gena. I think it's worth mentioning that you and I worked together at the Brown School. Our dean allowed us to recruit for the first time in the 40 years that I've been at the Brown School. She allowed us to actively recruit workers for this upcoming election. Would you give a little highlight about that initiative?
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. So, Dean Mary, I'm so excited. I've been sharing this all over the place about how fortunate we are. Gave us, Cynthia and I, an opportunity to pull together a proposal to encourage students, faculty, staff, and even alumni to vote. And with Cynthia's thoughtfulness about this, she took it a step further and said, hey, let's see if we can get Dean McKay to allow staff and faculty to have that day off and not have to use vacation time in order to participate either as a poll worker or election protection. And so that is still on the table. We should probably put that link in, and hopefully people will do it. They need poll workers badly. Let me tell you, the average age of poll workers, some people say it's 65, it's more like 75, 80. And they just can't be out in under these conditions. And so we need poll workers. So, and election protection people. Yeah, and social media folks. So yeah. So the same training is open to our faculty, staff, and students for the election protection training as well. So yeah, so this is huge. This is big. I don't know if any other school is doing this on campus, but it's a big deal. And I hope that people will do it.
And really quickly, that same platform that we created, Gena, you know, our other organizations in the community asked for the platform and how we framed it. We sent that platform to organizations in the community, and they launched it with their employees. And within a week, one organization, Better Family Life, recruited at least 20 more poll workers for the election. So when I'm telling you our work, and that's only one organization that I know about. So that work has been duplicated just because we got it started.
That is absolutely wonderful. If there's a way, let's get together. I would love, we're going to do an evaluation and just to see about their experience. And I would love to be able to give that to those employees with Better Family Life and other organizations so that we can learn from it and see what we can do better. Oh, the one other thing I wanted to tell you about the envelopes that I talked about, the return envelopes, those are revisions. So it used to be worse than that. if you can imagine, you know, the small type and all of that. So there's so many things that are possible. So myself, along with the St. Louis Area Voter Protection Coalition, along with VAE, when we went to go help with the rejected ballots, we looked at this and we looked at one of the election officials and said, hey, this is too much. Would you allow us to do a redesign? Gave them a redesign and they did it. That's the power of people being in there and talking to them, because, and it's relational. We built relationships with them to say, you know, when I first started this work and doing that initial research project, I had to let them know that I wasn't an enemy. I wasn't trying to critique them. I wanted to make things better. And they finally got it. And and what I realized too, is that that's their job, is to make sure that people can vote. They're not out to do anything nefarious as a whole, at least the ones that I talk to. They want people to be able to vote as well. So, it was good. So there's anything's possible.
That's a very hopeful way of pivoting at the very end. And with that, we are at time, but I would love to ask you any final thoughts, any call to action that you want to share. You've just shown a great example of how a couple of people can make a difference, cause a ripple that continues to make a difference. What do we want to leave people with before we say goodbye today?
I would say, you know, don't give up. Try, pay attention to your students, your family, your friends, have conversations with them about voting, and just be encouraged, because it's, you know, there's still fight left. We can still make a difference. Every single person, even if you're disabled, I have a role for you. Something that you can do. So.
Thank you for that. Thank you for taking the time and sharing all of this information. Really appreciate it. To my co-host, Cynthia Williams, thank you for making this look easy. And to our audience, thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you soon at another Open Classroom. Until then, stay healthy, stay safe. If you haven't registered to vote, register. If you know someone who isn't registered, get them to register. And we'll see you soon. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.